Welcome to Born to be Barefoot. I'm your host, Stuart Gordon, with my co-host, Katie Tsuyuki. So welcome to our Born to be Barefoot podcast. With our latest guest is a fantastic gentleman called Ian Hosek, who hails from the mountains in Idaho in North America. Ian, welcome.
Thank you guys for having me.
It's our pleasure. And of course, my co-host, Katie Tsuyuki, is here with her headphones on and her baseball cap, ready to ask prompting and intuitive questions.
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Intuitive question, Katie.
Okay. Well, Ian, man, I love your website. It looks so cool. I'm looking at it, and performance engineering. That's what it's. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this performance engineering?
Yeah, so it's kind of a play on words because my actual undergrad is in materials engineering. I went through engineering school, and I decided I didn't really want to be like a standard engineer. So I went and actually worked at Nike for a number of years in the Portland, Beaverton area out in Western US and Oregon, and then started up my own coaching business. And while at Nike, I really got the opportunity to work with some of the world's like leading physiologists. So the people who work with Kipchoge and the team that were on Breaking 2, those were my coworkers, and I learned so much from them. And then I started having conversations with other people in the industry and realized like, I know a lot, maybe I'll try coaching. And I started with just a few athletes and then really fell in love with it. And I've been doing that ever since. I also had a brief stint at a sports nutrition company, Hammer Nutrition, up in the northern US as well. So with that background, I started my own coaching business, and I am definitely a performance endurance athletics coach. But that doesn't mean I just only work with elites, but I work with anyone from like brand new to running off the couch all the way up to world champions.
And what are you working in very specific sports, or do you work with anyone, or what's the majority of your athletes that come to you?
Yeah,
what sport are they coming from?
I'm specifically known in obstacle course racing, but also in the trail running world. And then I do work with a couple marathoners or road runners. I would say they're kind of the smaller group out of my clientele, but it's primarily trail runners and obstacle course racers.
Oh, so that's what the OCR, because I'm looking at your site and everything. This OCR kept on popping up, and I'm like, oh, I'm out of this world. What's OCR? So it's
no, that's fine. I probably need to
obstacle course racing.
That's become a big deal, hasn't it, over the last few years? A lot of sponsorship, a lot of races internationally as well. Yeah,
there's some good money in it. I think there's less money in terms of sponsorship than you would see in trail running, but the prize purses are actually bigger than trail running, so it's kind of a trade-off. But it has gained some traction, so it's great.
And you've been doing it since 2011.
Yes. Coming out of college, I just had done a little local race and I fell in love with it. I've always loved running. I really got into it kind of later in school. And then I found that I loved doing things while running. And so obstacle course racing really fit my my fun meter really high, I guess.
I find it's an interesting one. As a therapist, when I talk to people about running, a lot of people come and see me for treatment who are runners. And one of my key things is I say to them, try and run like you did maybe as a kid. So if there's a puddle, don't just carefully move around it. Leap over it. If there's a bank to the side, run up the bank, run down the bank, vary things. And to me, trail running to a large extent, but the obstacle running in particular, starts to take people through the whole range of movements that humans are designed to do. And I think that's a brilliant sort of, all-round neuromuscular, musculoskeletal exercise program, isn't it, really?
Yeah. I mean, having been in the sports world for so long, I'm hard pressed to find like a more well-rounded athlete in terms of endurance athletics, but also quite strong and have to be very coordinated. They have balance obstacles. So it's nice because it does create like a very holistic human who can do just about anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, holistic. Move through any environment, A to B, fastest way, right?
Exactly. And that's kind of the point. They're like, you got to start, and then we'll just put things in your way, whether they're called rigs, where they're like really complex monkey bars, or you have to carry a bucket of rocks around, crawl under something, jump over a wall. They make you do just about any type of movement.
Now, is it always a set course, or do they try and throw curveballs at you, like, oh, you're going to come to this station and you're not going to know what it is, and they like set it up as they go along or anything like that? Or is it pretty like, this is just the course?
There are different versions. So some of them are like, there's 100-meter course that is like super short, that's the same every time. And then the vast majority of the sport is completely different. They'll be at the similar venues year to year, but you up different routes, and the obstacles will be in different spots, or entirely new obstacles, or they change them up. So the majority of the races are like, you kind of have an idea what's coming, but you kind of got to go with it on the fly as well.
Except for that 100-meter course. That 100-meter course, is that the kind of like the set standard? Is that like for time setting? And
yeah, exactly. It's a similar thing to Ninja, except it's not as like overly complex obstacles. Like they go through that extremely fast, and it's the same 10 obstacles every time. And that's fairly new to the sport. It's part of the more standardized side, whereas the rest of it is, you'll see anywhere from like a 5K up to an ultra marathon, where they do either laps or different obstacles. So there's even 24-hour versions where they'll do like a 5-mile lap as many times as you can in 24 hours with obstacles. So it's a little bit of everything. You can really find whatever you're looking for within the sport.
Presumably there's a strong base in this with the military training, then the military assault courses. I don't know whether that's something that has married into this. So,
a little bit. That's definitely where the roots of like the sport came from, are those military style obstacle courses. And it definitely is a presence. So you'll see Air Force or like US Air Force or US Army as major sponsors, at least in the US. Right. And then some other, I've done races with international teams where like Norwegian Special Forces might be involved or something like that. One of my early claim to fame was I beat a Norwegian Special Forces operative in one of my first races. So I thought that was pretty cool when I was in college.
Well, hopefully he didn't take you out behind the sort of the changing rooms.
I mean, he could have taken me down many different ways, I'm sure. I'm fairly slender, and then he's like 6'4".
Oh my God.
Over 200 pounds, could just squish me with his foot. But yeah, it was, it definitely plays a role, but it's kind of gone more towards the sport aspect instead of that military style. You'll still find it from time to time, but it's grown beyond that.
Right. So Ian, can we take you back? You were saying you did your engineering, and it was, because I wonder whether it was biomechanical engineering or some sort of, human movement related thing. What drew you to Nike? I mean, how did that come about? That's quite a start point.
Yeah. So I mean, in my engineering, we did do some biomedical stuff. So mostly on the materials side, like stents, and then medical devices. And I worked as an intern for a medical device company, just doing straight engineering. And I was like, this is not for me. I can't be stuck in a lab all day. I really enjoyed the science, but the culture was just not what I was looking for. And then after school, my partner and I, she was actually doing her master's degree in Edmonton, and she was doing biomechanics research. So that's partly of it, but we've also really both been involved in sport and passionate about sport for so long. I got a job at Nike working in their kind of digital devices. So some engineering, but more sports side of things. They were actually developing a heart rate monitor way back when, which would have been cutting edge. And then they canned the project 3 years into it. So that's always a little heartbreaking. And then just kind of worked my way into Nike and finding different projects that really fit my interest in what I was passionate about, which was running and physiology. And then also having a partner who had her master's degree in biomechanics, I learned her brain as well. So a lot of conversations on what running mechanics should look like, as well as just human movement. And then going back to just engineering and science, physics is like once you have a solid understanding of physics and how things should move and how the human body works with like anatomy, like muscles create tension. It's not like tendons do anything, things along those lines. You can then apply that physics and kind of create this model of how the most efficient way of movement to each individual. And that's kind of a broad thing, but everyone moves differently depending on.
Yes, there's a general pattern and then specifics within. So what is, in your view, is the most efficient way of human movement for a runner?
Something that doesn't get you injured, and I mean, whatever works for you. There are certain things like you don't want to be overstriding. People always think of heel striking. You can heel strike, but when you start overstriding and going beyond like your center of mass, that's where the real problem comes in. And people will say heel striking is the problem, but really they're just overstriding. That's a braking force which goes into some joints, and somewhere along the line something's going to degrade and not be able to handle that. So that's definitely it. And then also having just a good postural alignment up high, kind of within your back, just kind of good alignment to allow your muscles to be utilized in the most efficient and maximal ways. If you have large pelvic tilt, you are getting rid of some of your glutes and hamstrings, things along those lines. Or if you're really leaning far back, you're putting your center of mass backwards and not allowing gravity to help move you forward. Running is really just controlled falling at the most efficient method. So you can run forward and fall in a nice manner, and allow gravity to propel you forwards while staying vertical. That's the best way to go.
I use the description of, as a kid again, when you're running down a hill, there's that point where you think any minute now I'm going to go splat, but somehow or other you manage to keep your feet underneath you. And that's kind of the sensation you almost need to generate, isn't it? Is to give you that momentum moving forward, obviously without the splat. It's an interesting one, isn't it?
So, and I love your metaphor of children, because they run so they have great mechanics, and then we put shoes or we do weird things or they get injured, any number of things, and they shift away from this really nice, efficient movement pattern into what we see nowadays, which can create large issues.
Yeah.
And Ian, are you using any technology to do any of these assessments when your clients come in? Are you using an app on your phone or a gate system or something?
One of the nice things nowadays is we all have a very, very high quality camera on our bodies at all time. I am specific in terms of how I want things filmed, but I do a lot of remote work. I make sure clients don't do it on the treadmill, because treadmill does change your gait. Instead of you propelling yourself forward, the belt's doing some of the work and it shifts movement patterns. So I'll actually have them go outside on a flat space and make someone else run next to them, or at least try and get as steady of a camera as possible from all the different angles and some different speeds. And then just get that image, take that videos and make sure they send in high quality, and just do the analysis myself. There's some programs you can get that are just do angle measurements and things like that, but it's mostly just looking at the overarching mechanics and not really diving into true numbers.
And you do a lot of heart rate work, right? The heart rate training. And I with that, do you have equipment that you want them to use? Are you make sure you use a chest monitor, not a watch monitor, or do you have preferences for that?
Yeah, that's a great point. I do not trust wrist-based optical heart rate whatsoever. It's not a great place. It's a great place to take a pulse, but on the back of your wrist or in a point that really moves a lot, and it's not very contoured to good contact for light. So there are new options, which are armband monitors that are optical heart rates. Those are really great, and I've done some own validation testing on those, and those are actually highly accurate. Not as accurate as the gold standard chest strap for sure, but I always recommend to my clients either the chest strap or those armbands, just because the watches are really good if you're sitting or biking or not really doing a lot of moving. But often the watch on the wrist can get locked onto cadence from arm swing, or a number of different things.
Right. Good point. Definitely good point.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that's part of like a lot of the work I did when I was working at Nike is looking at the different ways to measure heart rate, and on the wrist is not the way to go.
And did they just abandon the project because they're like, we're an apparel company, not necessarily a technology company? Or was that just...
That was beyond my, I don't know. That I was
beyond my pay grade.
Yeah, exactly. I was just a lowly engineer at that point. I'm probably violated some NDAs telling you guys that, but it's like, I don't even know how many years later, so I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
by now.
They're not going to come.
So are you still competing?
I do compete occasionally. The past 2 years have been a little less, just coming out of the pandemic with a slump and just like weird motivation issues. But I'm excited for 2023 and kind of just got some races on my schedule. Possibly a couple ultras early in the season, as well as obstacle course racing.
And so in your backyard, do you have an obstacle course set up like all the time? Like, do people come to your house and they're like, let's go obstacle man? Or
don't. It's been on, like, I've been toying with the idea for quite a while. I usually just go to like a local kids playground and do some random things and look really weird sometimes, just jumping around, swinging. And then also rock climbing is a really good way to help train that type of stuff. So there's a local climbing gym I'll go to as well.
Right.
I think it's kind of verging into the parkour stuff as well, aren't you, with this?
A little bit. I've ran and I've competed with parkour athletes. They are definitely more agile and adept at that style of movement than we are. We're good at more of like the long, grindy stuff that can like, we're quick on obstacles and movements, but they are like lightning speed. We also don't jump off like 20-foot buildings.
But can they run? Can they like run the distance? You know what I mean? Like if you're on even a 5K course or something like that, like
not always. 5K maybe, but like pushing beyond that, you'll notice their stamina will drop off quite readily. They're more of like that anaerobic movement system.
Right.
Huge amount of spring.
Yeah, right. What's like the Olympics of obstacle course racing? Like, what's the biggest event that you guys go to?
We're trying to get in the Olympics. That's like, there's an international organization, World Obstacle, working towards that. And then we are starting to get like national federations popping up. I'm actually on the board of USA OCR, which is the US National Federation for Obstacle Course Racing. As far as like the biggest and most prestigious races, usually there are two that I would kind of put in that category. Usually the one that has the biggest prize purse is Spartan Race World Championships. And
Spartan,
the big name brand in obstacle course racing. Then many people have heard of Tough Mudder as well. They have a really prestigious world championship. That's the 24-hour one, where it's a lap format. You just go as many times as you can in 24 hours.
And is that team or is that individual, or do they have both?
Both. So sometimes they'll do team, or you can run as a team, and that's a different championship than the individual one. But then you get people, in that one, people are wearing like several millimeter wetsuits while getting in like ice water at 3 a.m. So it's quite an experience. And then there's another one that's actually titled Obstacle Course Racing World Championships. And that is a private company that just took that name. So that was great marketing on their part. And they're very kind of more on the technical side of obstacle course racing with really complex obstacles. And they draw from all different races over the world in terms of the obstacles and then combine them into one race, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. And then there is a world championship of obstacle course racing independent of the private company that's starting this year as well. And that'll be in Belgium. And that one is, you have to be on your national federation team to race. So like Team Canada or Team USA, Team UK.
Right. Yeah. Okay. As individual or team?
Those I believe are all individual. I don't think there's a team option this year.
Okay.
So it really has become and is continuing to become a significant event, isn't it, in its own right now? That's quite impressive.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm going to go back to your training stuff. It's interesting when, as you know, this podcast is sponsored by Barefoot Science insoles, and they're partnered with a company called Microgate in the USA, who designed the use of Optigate gait analysis system. Mm-hmm. I know that the guy there, he also did, the same guy who came up with that particular usage of Optigate, also developed the polar heart rate monitor. And he's done a lot of work similarly with Nike as well. And he went to the Nike project in Oregon and took the Optigate system there and did a lot of work with people like Mo Farah when he was there. And is that something that you've actually experienced, the use of those sorts of gaits analysis, or is that not one of the ones that you came across?
I don't know about Optigate specifically. My partner may have actually used that in her lab. Like she worked in the Nike Sport Research Lab. Right. So she may have interacted with this individual.
Yeah, there's a guy called Dr. Gorman, Peter Gorman. He went out there and did a lot of stuff. It'd be really interesting to see what. It's a shame. Is she with you? Is she there?
She's not here right now. She's off doing nonprofit work right now. She's at a board meeting. But I have worked with. I've never operated those machines myself, but I've had many times markers placed on me and gone through the analysis with the biomechanists. And yeah, I've done more testing than many people, mostly on myself, as well as I did run tests at Nike for some of the digital side of things, and did shadow intern for a couple of different projects as well. But no, it's quite fascinating, and the equipment and the laboratory they have, especially in the new buildings, which they put in a few years ago, is quite crazy. They've put pressure like force plates in the track, things along those lines.
Yeah. And for you, I mean, you talked about the business of not overstriding. But there's a lot of stuff about symmetry of left side, right side movement. Is that something that you focus on as well? When you're looking at stride length or relative left side, right side contact time, these sorts of things, do you look at these as issues?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, like, I have an athlete who has like an actual structural leg length difference, so things like that you also have to take into account. So when looking at like unilateral stuff, you have to make sure that like the symmetry may not be there, and that there's a reason for that. However, if you do see other major things, you can see hip drop or definitely contact time. And that can sometimes talk about what type of injury, or they might have an injury if there's a limp going on. And especially if they do have imbalances or are subconsciously correcting, that can definitely create future problems as well, which you want to avoid.
And so what's your go-to? I know I've looked at, like Katie, looked at your website, and you talk about your work with the nutritional side of things, and you talk a lot about recovery, which I still find astonishing that's not the standard.
I don't understand why everyone just doesn't do it. It's so easy, and you get so many free gains from it.
Yeah. So I mean, that's something you clearly major.
When you say recovery, though, like, can we be a little more specific? Like, do you mean stretching? Do you mean like active recovery? Do you mean, you know what I mean? Like, is it holistic? Like, it should be holistic. It should be, but
yes, the answer is yes to everything. And I mean, there are certain things that I recommend avoiding. For example, like many people really go towards cold therapy or cryotherapy or icing. That has its place, but it's fairly specific. So like if you have a multi-day event or many events in one day, that would be really great to have like that acute icing to help relieve inflammation. But they have shown that long-term icing kind of does inhibit some recovery stuff. So I'm a big fan of heat or contrast therapy, so alternating hot, cold. And then as far as like recovery for everything else, sleep and eating enough is by far the most number one thing you can do, is making sure like you're getting enough sleep. And in today's world, that's pretty rare. Athletes are usually pretty good because they want to sleep all the time, but just in like corporate world or just general life, it's sometimes hard to get the actual amount of rest that you need. And then on the nutrition side, one of the easy things is just making sure you're getting a post run or workout, just recovery drink or meal or something like that. The standard, or the kind of the the main thing people say is try and get like a nice balance of carbs and protein within 45 minutes of a workout session, and then like a meal within 3 hours. And just doing those small things can really help. For one, it helps with glycogen stores, but it also helps with muscle protein synthesis, and just getting you ready for the next session.
Right. Yeah. Because everyone, like, people always think that recovery is like a very like active thing. Like you have to go out and do it. Like I have to go and stretch, or I have to go and, drink water, whatever. Well, but like the sleep and eating properly is something that we just do anyways, but we just don't do it right. Like we don't necessarily always connect that with recovery. We just like, oh, that's just life.
Yeah. And I mean, the vast majority of recovery happens during sleep, or when you're in like that restful recovery state. Like your parasympathetic nervous system is kicking in, and that usually is during sleep or like a nap or something along those days. Or if you eat a big meal, sometimes you'll feel sleepy, and that's your nervous system like, hey, we're going to digest and recover things. But I mean, there are like active recovery is really helpful, mostly just getting like circulating blood to like injured areas, or just kind of general system is extremely powerful, help remove waste and byproducts from certain areas, as well as get fresh oxygen, fresh blood nutrients. So that is helpful. However, when people hear active recovery, that doesn't mean go out for like a 60-minute easy run. It might be like go for a 15-minute nice walk.
Yeah.
Or if you're sleep deprived, I would rather you just take a nap instead of like going and doing something. Catching up on sleep and just getting that extra rest is so helpful. And they're all like the gimmicks out there. Some of them work, some of them don't work. Theraguns make you feel good, and they can help with some mobility, and help with a little blood flow, but they're not like the major. There are other things you can do that are even more beneficial. And then manual tissue release, like foam rolling, that's been shown to be pretty good. So yeah, and everyone's always looking for the new easy thing to make them be the best they can, but just sleep and eat right.
Yeah, right. Well, but lots of people like they feel like they need permission to sleep. Like when I was an athlete, I actually didn't start really napping until one of my therapists I called her the witch doctor, because like I'd go into her like messed up, like couldn't walk, whatever. And I'd come out that same day being like, oh, sweet, feel awesome. But anyways, she was the one that was like, no, you need to be napping. And she's like, you need to nap between 2 and 4. That's like the magic. Or like, not, and she's like, only, 20 minutes, don't exceed 35 minutes like of sleep. But as soon as she said that to me, then I gave myself permission to do that, to like, so, like being a coach, or like you, Stuart, being a therapist, actually telling people, hey, it's okay to nap. Like you go take a nap, will help them do that.
I had this conversation today. The first podcast we did in our series was with a bunch of a couple of climbers, young climbers. One was 11, one was 16, and their coach was there. And these are elite level climbers. Mm-hmm. One had just come 19th in the World Championships and the Youth Championships. And she was in to see me today. And we'd had this conversation about recovery again. And for her, she's training 6 days a week. She's really putting the work in. And she thought going for a run was her recovery from the climbing thing. So she's learning. But can I just go back a fraction? Because you said something a minute ago, which is super, super important. And it needs some explanation. You talked about parasympathetic. So we need to just explain perhaps to those people out there listening where we are with its opposite buddy being the sympathetic nervous system, and then we have the parasympathetic nervous system. So do you want to just talk us through the relevance of that and what they are, what they mean?
Absolutely. I mean, people are probably pretty accustomed and aware of both and how they make you feel, but sympathetic nervous system is like day-to-day, but also like your fight or flight response, and kind of when you're working out or training or stressful situations, it's keeping you alert, it's keeping you ready to do whatever is in front of you and survive, whether that means going into a really scary board meeting or typing up an Excel document for a long time, or running a running race or obstacle course racing race, or like really sending it on a hard bouldering problem. That's the thing that keeps you moving. And then your parasympathetic nervous system is the complete opposite. It is your sleepy time, rest and recover, digest and reset. Make sure your body is able to do all those things that your sympathetic nervous system is wanting you to do. And one of the things with my heart rate training that I see from time to time is heart rate depression, where if you start to overtrain or really go beyond your means and fatigue levels are high, your parasympathetic nervous system can start taking over, and then you'll see heart rate not being able to get to certain levels or values, or it's extremely hard to elevate it in workouts. So it's basically just, it forces people down and they can't really go beyond it. Because it's like, you shouldn't be doing this, and that's your body literally telling you, stop, we're going to rest and recover, so then maybe you can in the future.
And of course, the problem at that point for a lot of people is that they'll say, I can't afford to stop, I need to keep going. So then they
I got this race coming up, or
they force that sympathetic response, which is our cortisol release, a hormone called cortisol.
Exactly. And cortisol is the worst.
So pump it out into the bloodstream. And it's interesting, you said, as you say, when you're in the sympathetic and it's functioning nicely, it's priming us ready for whatever the activity or the action required, deal with the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's constantly happening, that cortisol sits in the bloodstream, it sits in the muscle fibers, and you try and stretch when you're full of cortisol, and all you're going to do is damage yourself. And we've got to get into the parasympathetic. So apart from sleep, what's the trick for you? Do you talk to people about these? There are a lot of apps that people can use to get calmed down, or do you just talk about breathing? What's your go-to sort of technique for if you're not going to go and have a power nap? What are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's different for every individual, because like not everyone can go meditate. There are some really great apps out there. I've recommended Headspace to a few individuals. Often just like finding a good therapist is great. Us millennials love our therapists, mental therapists and physical therapists for that matter. Or just find time for yourself. I usually call it you time or whatever, that you can go chill out and relax, whether that's reading a book, making a meal, whatever things that calm you down and take you away from that stressful life, or whatever is stressing you out. Obviously, naps are great. And then sometimes it can just be running, like making sure you're getting your workouts in. Like the happy hormones that come from working out are fantastic and complete opposite. Yes, you can get some cortisol buildup from really stressful workouts. So if you are super stressed, sometimes it may not be the best to go do like an interval session or something along those lines, unless you really are going to feel good. But if you're stressed to the point where it's really impacting physical things, then sometimes making sure you're doing the right workout in that situation. I had a conversation with an athlete the other day about how just life stress can play such an impactful role on training and performance in general. So it depends on the individual for sure.
And so for people to recognize this, because that's one of the hardest things, isn't it? If you're in it, how do you recognize it? Is that where you come back to your heart rate monitoring, taking the pulse in the morning? Is that where you go for, or?
That can be it. I mean, it's more going to be, it's a little bit of everything. It's not going to just be one specific metric. Kind of, it's an overarching thing. Like, is performance dropping? Are you not sleeping enough? Are you noticing you're really irritable? How's your diet been? Looking at like the big picture and seeing how that's playing in, and then kind of talking about what the factors could be. Because if everything's great, except for you have a huge amount of work stress, obviously that's going to be where it's coming from. So trying to pinpoint what actually is the cause of things not trending or progressing like you want it to be.
So basically, running coaching for you is lifestyle coaching, isn't it?
I mean, but as we progress in science and understanding, yes, the like knowing how to program a run program and like heart rate zone training, all of those things. But if you're going to coach an athlete as a performance coach, you need to make sure everything else is in place. lifestyle coaching definitely plays a role sometimes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Almost impossible to differentiate, isn't it? Really,
Exactly.
Yeah, we're all out there living. I mean, even if you're a full-time athlete, you've still got to balance different aspects of your personal life as well, relationships, everything goes in there, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then also it's hard when you care and you want, well, it's not hard, but it does make it more challenging often if you want your athletes to succeed. So you do start trying to figure out ways to help them optimize their training or just like become more efficient.
Yeah. Now, we always like to ask a question. I mean, so when you've been out and about on your trail runs, more perhaps so than the obstacle course races, any sort of funny, entertaining things?
Well, you're in Idaho, right? You're like trail running with like bears and mountain lions and like.
Oh yeah, I've had some stories.
Come on, tell us about it.
I have two that come to mind. The first one, I was mountain biking over in the Big Hole Mountain Range, and I got off my bike to take like a picture. Probably was doing an Instagram story, and I come back to my bike and I get on it and I'm going down the trail, and there is a full-grown mountain lion stalking up the trail silently towards me. And this is a kind of animal that can easily kill a human. Like, its tail was over a meter high. Like, it was probably 1.5 meters, straight up and like coming down the road. And I freaked out. When you see this big of a cat, the thing you're supposed to do is become big and loud. And on my mountain bike, I just started screaming. I like waved one of my arms and I like chased it down the trail. And it veered off down the hill. And I'm going full tilt because sympathetic nervous system is firing hard. And I come around a corner and whip almost directly into a bull moose that's even bigger than the mountain lion. No. And this is probably like less than half K away from on the trail. And I yell at the moose. I'm like, there's a mountain lion up there. You better watch out. And I just keep going. I had longer ride and I just cut it short. I was like, I got my heart rate up as much as I possibly could in that amount of time.
Oh yeah.
And so that's one of them. And then the other one.
Where was that Norwegian special forces guy when you needed him?
I mean, he's long gone. He's doing Norwegian special forces thing. I'm just me running around in the woods, like around. And then let's see, 2 winters ago, I was on a backcountry ski trip with a friend. We were just going up a mountain, and we get about halfway up, and there's like a huge cliff band on our right that drops like 40, 50 feet. And then kind of the trail goes straight up. And up the trail is the largest animal I had ever seen in my life, which is another bull moose. But it looked like an ancient dinosaur. Like, it was so big. The snow was probably 1.5 meters deep, and it was just standing, and it wasn't even touching its chest.
Goodness.
So my friend and I decided to go very far away from it towards the cliffs, the very unsafe area. But we decided that was a lot safer than dealing with the prehistoric moose up on the mountain.
How aggressive are they?
Extremely aggressive.
Really?
Yes. I mean, they're not going to just randomly charge you, but I am more scared of a moose than like a grizzly bear.
Wow.
So, and especially a mama moose, but
yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like the cows are definitely would be one to, you don't mess with. And then if you see a baby one around, you're like, you get out of there.
Where is mom? Yeah. But I would say they're more like incidents in our area with moose than like bears. Like black bears, to me, the smaller bears, I just think they're like big dogs. I don't really care about them. But
yeah.
A full-grown grizzly bear or full-grown moose, I don't like to play with.
Yeah, because you're like wild country, you know?
I mean, we're on the front range sometimes, but we can get backcountry very, very easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like you ski tour quite a bit, like in the wintertime, right?
I mean, I run some, but there's so much snow that I'm hard pressed to go like not run ice-packed trails or like ice-packed roads. So there's a lot of skiing involved in like alpine skiing, backcountry skiing, all cross country skiing, you name it.
Right. Because like you're still training yourself, right? For for OCRs.
I'm starting to pick it up, but just kind of get my cardiovascular foundation with cross training right now, and then do some more mechanic based stuff as things thaw out.
Right. So do you ever like adapt your kind of running workouts to like your ski touring? Like when you're going up the mountain, you're like, okay, I'm going to do this tempo and get in this heart rate range. And
yeah, I do. I definitely do that. Especially when I'm doing more ski mountaineering. I like the Skimo skinny ski stuff. That's the easiest because you can basically run on the skis. I'll do interval workouts on my big fatties. And
is your partner like, it could just be your hiking partner or your life partner or whatever. Like, are they like, oh God, I'm not going with Ian because he's going to make me do his tempo workout, or he's going to be gone? Or
it depends on who I go with. There are a couple other like crazy other endurance buddies who will absolutely do things like that with me. And the other people who I go with recreationally are like, no, just make sure the radio's on, like, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, right. So Ian, what's the next big thing for you? Is it like looking for more clients? Is it setting a goal to sit for your next obstacle course race? Is it?
Yeah, I got a couple things this year. There's a program I've been working on, kind of an adaptive running program on that you can sign up for that I'm pretty excited to launch in 2023. So like you input some data personal to you, and then it creates a running program with specific volumes and like target intensities to hit, as opposed to just a straight cookie cutter. This gives you a nice, like, you're at this level, this is where you should start.
So you're using your own algorithm for that?
I am, yeah.
Push that out, right?
Yeah. So that is my magic algorithm I've come up with over the years of all my training and education. And then I do have like 2 spots open on my client roster right now. So that is definitely an option if people are interested in working with me.
Where do they go to?
They can go to hosekpe.com, HOSEKPE.com, or you can reach out on Instagram, which is OCR_Hosek. I think that's my handle. I don't know.
I think it is.
Okay. Sounds right. It's either Hosek OCR or OCR Hosek, one of those two. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me, and very responsive on those. And then as far as my own like personal athletic goals, with kind of this first year of having an actual world championship for obstacle course racing by like an international federation, one of my goals would be to get on Team USA, which I'm working towards. And
this is for the event in Belgium.
It is, yeah. So that's a goal.
How close? How confident are you?
If I get in shape, I'll be all right. The US has some of the best athletes in this space.
I bet.
Yeah, there's some really good UK. There's one really good UK guy. I don't know if you guys know of John Alban. He competes in the space occasionally. He's really big in the trail world. And then there's a couple Russians who are pretty good. So it's exciting and moving forward. And that's kind of what I'm looking for this year. Those are my big overarching goals for 2023 and working towards them.
So just to help you potentially achieve this, I gather you've received a pair of these Barefoot Science insoles from our sponsor.
It is coming in an hour and 15 minutes. Again, rural Idaho, we don't get things very quick.
Some moose has
exactly
moose mail.
Postman. Yeah. So what we'd love to do, actually, Ian, I mean, this is on the basis that you haven't had a chance to actually look at these things and have a go with them, is maybe come back and have maybe just a short chat and see how you feel about the insoles. I mean, have you had a brief explanation of what they're about and how they work, or?
Yeah, I looked it up a little bit. I looked at your site and kind of got an understanding. And then I grew up with insoles, my mom being a physical therapist. So she had me in insoles and specialized in like foot physical therapy. So I was in insoles from a long time. I don't necessarily agree that was the best choice as a child, but that's how it goes.
Yeah. Now, again, as a therapist, I think with children, the less is more. But the beauty of it'll be really interesting to see how you feel about these ones, because they're very fundamentally different to anything else that you will have experienced, in that they're not propping the foot, they're not cushioning the foot, they're not supporting the foot particularly. It's all about the proprioceptive stimulus, and I'm sure
I wear some very minimalist shoes, so this will be great.
Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'm a advocate of the minimal shoes, and I only ever have these insoles in them, because they give you just that little bit extra. So it'd be really interesting. Great. So yeah,
no, I'd love that to come discuss more. And I mean, I also alternate between like a minimalist for like shorter runs and then kind of like longer stuff. If I'm really going out and about, I do have to like get something more, not supportive, but a little bit more under my foot. Because if I'm stomping down a mountain and really hit not even a big rock, a small pebble hard, it can really.
It's the small ones are the worst ones, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
Right into your plantar fascia, and that doesn't feel good.
Yeah. No, well, that's fantastic. Well, we're going to have to wrap up, but it sounds like you've got a really amazing thing coming up with this system that you're developing for what's probably the holy grail of on-distance coaching, isn't it? I mean, as a coach online with clients presumably spread all over the country and all over the world, that ability to bring the data in and come up with that individualized program based on some really sort of solid facts is that's got to be the holy grail, isn't it, for you?
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's more on the scaling side, so I'm not going to be working one-on-one with these individuals. But if someone doesn't want to pay or can't afford the big rate, or wants to get the coaching or my methods and coaching style and platform that way, I'm really excited for it.
Cool. Well, good luck with that, and very, very good luck with the attempt to get into the World Championships.
Thank you.
That sounds pretty amazing.
Definitely.
And we'll see you hopefully again to just review how that. When is that, by the way? When is the World Championships?
That's in late September, early October, I think. So quite a while.
So what we need to do then, we need to have a chat with you maybe in July time, and then again after the World to see whether you're getting there and if you've got there.
I mean, so I think the decision will kind of be July, August is when we'll know for like the team selection.
Okay.
Well, that's my guess, but yeah, it'll be. I mean, fingers crossed, but also work at it.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed only goes so far.
Can't you just have a power nap and cross your fingers and it'll all happen?
I wish it worked that way.
Brilliant. Well, Ian, best of luck. And Katie, are you going to sign us off with your stylish way? Contact details, repeat them.
Yes, Ian, thank you so much for coming on the show. Why don't you give us your website and your Instagram again?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It was great. You can reach me at hosekpe.com, hosekpe.com. And then also OCR_Hosek is my Instagram handle. Fire questions any my way if you want to reach out about working with me. That's great.
There's 2 more spots left. Two more spots, guys.
2 more spots.
Snag up those spots. Yeah. And thank you, Stuart, for joining me for all the way across the world from the UK.
Yeah. So I'm going to say good night from the UK.
Yes. And I was going to say goodnight from New Zealand. But first, I want to thank our lovely audience who's out there. I know you've all hit the subscribe button and you're getting this weekly into your inbox. And if you haven't yet, then make sure you do. And once again, this podcast is powered by Barefoot Science Insoles. If you guys haven't yet, check out their website. It's barefoot-science.com. It gives you all of the info that you need to know there. Pretty cool. And from New Zealand, everyone, I am your co-host, Katie Tsuzuki, and we are signing off on this podcast. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, all you guys out there.
Lovely. Thanks ever so much, Ian.
Thank you, everyone.
You've been listening to the Born to Be Barefoot podcast with myself, Katie Tsuzuki, and the wonderful Stuart Gordon. Please remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star review. We'll see you guys next week.